Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Common Tongue Podcasts. Hopefully, you'll find this one a little interesting. We're doing something a little differently this week, where we're coming out with 2 episodes. So, this episode deals all about a pair of people who they do a magic podcast, and you'll find out all about that. But I thought it was very interesting. It was very I don't know what the word is, just so mind-opening, I guess, to learn all about this and be able to put it in perspective in terms that I would understand. Hopefully you guys enjoy this as well. I thought it was very interesting, so let's just jump into this episode. Hey everyone, welcome to another mediocre attempt at what we call a podcast here at the Common Tongue Podcast. I have some very special guests today. I'm excited to see how this one goes, so please, would you both introduce yourselves and state what you do for the record?
I'm RJ Walker. I'm a spoken word artist and writer.
I'm Elle Alder, and I'm a professional psychic and a solitary eclectic witch.
And we host the Mancy Podcast. It's a podcast about magic and how it's influenced our culture.
And I think it needs to be said, not magic like Penn and Teller. This is real practicing magic.
Yes, this is real, legit, actual spell work that you would do IRL.
Yeah, or the kind of magic that has been important throughout our history.
Yeah.
So would you say that the magic that you practice is closer to, I guess, would you call it Wicca magic, like Wiccan magic, or is it closer to Druid magic?
So I do, so I'm a solitary eclectic witch. So what that means is that I practice without a coven. So I only do spell work myself, or like sometimes I'll have RJ join me or our other roommate, but mostly I just do my own stuff. And then eclectic means that I take from all sorts of different cultural practices. So I don't have a primary practice. I'm not Hoodoo, I'm not Voodoo, I'm not Druid, I'm not Wiccan. I'm just kind of whatever I feel called to, and that's what I utilize in my practice.
So you're more of a vibe magician.
Yeah.
Or a vibe witch.
Yeah, like I feel like
I'm using that in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it.
Feel free to. I'm glad I could help at least some.
Yes. I mean, I feel like a lot of my stuff. So I started reading when I was pretty young. I started reading professionally when I was 20 years old. And I never really learned how to do readings. I just kind of had a deck of tarot cards and started doing readings, and people paid me for it. And that's kind of how my magic is. I feel like spirituality and magical practice is all deeply personal, and it should be. So I don't feel like people always choosing, I'm going to be Wicca, I'm going to do voodoo, is always inherently the best, because those practices are made for people that aren't you. So I'm really a big encourager of people creating their own practice and doing the things that work the best for them.
Okay. Now, would you say that there is an inherent difference between spirituality and magic, or are they finely connected?
Oh, I think it's complex, because I think any sort of kind of or any kind of spiritual practice that you do, including if you're religious, has elements of magic in it. So what I would call manifesting, which is basically putting something into the universe and then grounding it and bringing it to you. So you'll hear people manifest a new job, manifest a new relationship. That's the same thing as prayer. You're just putting it differently. So I think that spirituality in and of itself is kind of the practice of individual magic, but that can vary in how you do it. People are constantly doing magic, even if they don't know about it. When you light a candle and a birthday cake and you make a wish and you blow it out, that's magic. That's exactly what it is. So I think that part of the problem with spirituality and magic kind of in our culture and in our society now is that people want to draw that distinction, or they want to say, well, this is magic and this inherently is not magic, when magic is such a deep-rooted part of humanity. It's existed for so long. Our spiritual connection and communication is just part of who humans are, and that's what makes us human, I think.
Yeah. So continue with the birthday cake thing. The birthday ritual that we do is actually an ancient prayer to Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt. Yeah, I don't know if you knew that.
Really?
Yeah.
But when the daughters of Artemis would turn 16, they would hold a special ritual where they would bake a circular cake and baste it white so it looked like the moon, the full moon, and then you'd put the candles on it to make it glow like the moon, and then you'd blow them out, and the smoke would carry your wish to Artemis. So
that has to be made up. There is no that is wild.
Yeah. So like Elle is right. Magic is very deep in our culture, and whether you believe it's real or not, it still is highly influential in everything we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so crazy because, okay, now I will admit, when I was younger, I had an interest in magic, but I never practiced any, just because within my religious upbringing, it wasn't anything that I was particularly drawn to. I just had an interest in learning about it. I've always had a crazy interest in just learning as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm familiar with, I guess, certain aspects of practicing magic. So I'm familiar with angelology and demonology, you know, the hierarchy of heaven and the hierarchy of hell. I'm familiar with the Book of Solomon, or the Keys of Solomon, the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. I'm somewhat familiar with, what's his name? The crazy guy who created chaos magic.
Yeah, Aleister Crowley.
Sounds like Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
That greasy dude.
I'm somewhat familiar with Aleister Crowley and what he did, and other rituals that friends of mine who practice. I'm sort of in that, but wildly I am ignorant of a lot of things.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say that I do know is that I do know that a lot of holidays and a lot of things that we do in our culture are rooted in other ancient traditions. So, for example, like the date for Christmas. I am well aware that technically, while Christ was born somewhere in April, that technically December 25th, I want to say, was a Roman ritual or a Roman tradition. Yeah, Saturnalia. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I am familiar with that. But how much more of that is ingrained into our culture and all cultures?
I would say, I mean, it's
in like every part of every culture,
basically.
And a part of the thing about these winter festivals that I bring up on our Christmas episode is that there is a deep need for these winter celebrations, and even the most secular winter celebration, which is Midwinter Day, that all the scientists celebrate in Antarctica because they're stranded, serves a purpose to bring people together as they survive, you know, the harshest part of the planet during its harshest season. And this is true for a lot of those winter festivals. These rituals are very much centered around human survival and the struggle to understand our world.
And I would say, so on the kind of spiritual or the magical side of that, it's if you look at the time periods, basically, so there's Samhain, which happens on Halloween, and then Yule, which is winter solstice, and that's Christmas time. Winter solstice is typically the 20th or the 21st of December, depending on the moon cycle and all of that stuff. So that time period is those are the darkest days of the year. And so that is the time period when people do naturally a lot of shadow work, because we're basically in with the universe, with the world.
Yeah.
We function completely around the world because we're part of the world. And so from a spiritual perspective, people need those so that way they are not committing suicide. And that is literally what it is. But also,
really?
It's people needing to have something to hold on to. So that's why it's basically jam-packed. If you think about from Halloween, and then you go to Thanksgiving, and then how many holidays exist in different cultures from Thanksgiving to Christmas. You probably, like, there's no way you could really quantify or name them. If you look at every single culture, they have them. And it's because people needed those to have something to look forward to, something to get them through, something that would bring people together. And really, it's the gathering part of that makes sure our communities are safe. And that's where it comes from in magical practices. As well, I feel like kind of the question of how deeply rooted is magic in humanity or people or our culture. There is nothing that is more human than wanting to know what happens beyond this life. Like every single human, no matter who you are, wonders that and wants to have that connection. And people look for connection with the divine or spirit guides or angels or whatever you call it, whatever is that is outside of humans, because we want to have, one, someone to blame for the things that go wrong, and two, someone to petition for things to go right. And that's just innately human.
And I think that's fair. I think I understand the fact that people want something other than humans to blame or to praise. They want an outside force.
Yeah.
So with that, would you say that you believe in a more cosmic force than a cosmic being? To both of you, actually. This is just something as you've learned and studied.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm an atheist,
Yeah.
so I'm very much like, it's the universe, it's space, it's the chaos and entropy, and the things we know and don't know. But Elle is the more spiritual one of us.
You don't say. Well, I would say so what I personally believe in, and I think this question kind of what exists outside of us, or like what the driving force is. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in Christ. I don't believe like in those Christian or religious, I guess, structures maybe, or people,
institutions.
Yeah, I don't believe in that, but I do believe in what I call source. And so my personal theory, or what I believe happened in the universe, is that source is kind of like God. It would be God, but it is everything that has ever existed. And I believe that humans and souls, all of the souls that exist, are part of source. Like if you think about tentacles coming off of source, and source is then experiencing itself via humans or via other animals, creatures, whatever. So I don't necessarily view source as like a person, or I guess even really like a cosmic force. It's just kind of part of what we are. And for my personal beliefs, I don't worship any deities at all. I don't, and that's part of why I don't have like a specific witchcraft, because I don't believe in doing that, because deities need as much permission to exist as we do help from them. So I believe that we're all equals, and basically I just work on exchange. I also believe that the universe is just absolute utter chaos, but people figure out how to make it work or they don't. And so I believe that magic and spirituality is basically aligning yourself with the universe to take the things out of chaos that you want to make. And that's how I approach everything, is I'm like, everything is chaotic, everything is hard, but what you take out of that and what you attract to you is up to you. So,
which my dorky self has told Elle this before, but that's kind of how magic works in The Witcher.
Right.
And Elle's like,
yeah.
I don't get that.
I love The Witcher, though. The Witcher is one of my favorite games.
The audiobooks are just.
Oh, I really want to get started in those, but the problem is that I feel so bad for who is it? Project Red?
Yeah. The Cyberpunk 2077 nonsense happening.
So bad for them, because I love the Witcher series so much. CD Projekt Red, that's who it is. But I know what happened. I know what happened with Cyberpunk. Everybody knows what happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's just, I feel so bad for them for it.
Well, the author of the Witcher series actually got the short end of the stick from CD Projekt Red, Andrzej Sapkowski. They offered him money to license his series, and he was like, "Nobody likes my books anyway." Sure, and he just took a pittance, and then his the game was like a multi-million-dollar like moneymaker, and he was like. So definitely support his book series so that he gets money.
No, absolutely. I definitely am going to read those books now and listen to those audiobooks, because I love the Witcher games. They're so much fun. But so, and just so I can, in my monkey brain, just so I can make sense of what you're saying, Elle. So have you ever played Final Fantasy VII?
I haven't.
I for sure have.
I'm kind of a gamer, but not really.
Elle likes puzzle games and RTS games.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's see if you can answer this for me, RJ. Would you say that her belief in the source is something similar to the live stream, or is it vastly and complicatedly different?
Actually, I would say it's very much on the money for what the live stream is in Final Fantasy VII, with the exception of materia like being like condensed live stream.
Well, right, yeah.
Yeah. I would say so, like a more universal scale live stream.
Okay, that's interesting.
Sure.
Because, Well, okay, so basically the life string is something, it's a force of energy in this fictional world that connects everything.
Yeah,
And it's
the blood of the planet, basically.
Yeah, basically, but it's centered on the planet. That's where it stops. So yours is more of a cosmic scale where it's just the universe is the source of that, but it extends outward to everything and anything.
Yeah, and so I do a lot of my readings are Akashic record readings and like soul contract readings. So Akashic records, there's a lot of varying opinions about Akashic records because it's a thing that we know that exists, but is not a thing that is physical. So Akashic records are the records that hold all of the information of the past and of future potential. So I am not a fate-based psychic. I don't believe in destiny. I believe in choice. And I believe empowering people to make their own choices. So when I do readings, I'm not like, well, you have to marry this person, and if you don't, you're going to be alone forever. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. So
right, I can agree with that.
Yeah, in Akashic record readings, I just look at an individual soul. So if you came to me and you got a reading, then I would open your Akashic records, like metaphorically in, I guess, the cosmos, and be able to look at your book and tell you how you've existed. And I've seen a lot, like so many lifetimes that are not human lifetimes. The vast majority of souls spend very, very few amounts of lifetimes as humans because this lifetime is particularly difficult. And I've read for people, a lot of people who have been like animals. Like I met this one woman who was a dog and she just wanted to be a dog. And she was so confused about why human life is hard. And I was like, well, being a dog is very different from being a human. So I've seen that in a lot of different ways, but there are a lot of people kind of depending on their background. You might notice people who are really Christian that transition into being psychics or that feel called to be a psychic will then say, oh no, humanity is the only way. And then they believe in Christ consciousness. So there's a lot of dogma that kind of follows spiritual practitioners around throughout different, well, I guess depending on their background or what they do with that. But to me, I think that that's important because I think every person needs something different. I'm not going to be the best psychic for every single person. And I might have a friend who's a better psychic for them, or I can introduce them to other people. So I don't think that my worldview is the only one or the best one. It's just the one that I believe in because I've witnessed and seen it.
Right. And so I guess to tie that into RJ, so you, Elle, you very much believe in this. This is your belief system. You hold this very near and dear to your core.
Yeah, it's not only something that I believe in, but this is my work. This is literally my career, understanding and explaining this to people. So it is something that's like very important and a core value to me, but also something I recognize that a lot of people won't get or resonate with, and I'm cool with that too.
Right. And so RJ, on that side, with you being an atheist and I guess not necessarily believing in any one higher power, are there things that you have experienced with Elle that you can't explain other than what she does for when she's practicing? Or are you very much a skeptic?
I'm very much a skeptic, but sometimes things get spooky. We've
had some weird experiences.
Sometimes things get a little spoopy up in here. But for the most part, I can like see the value in what Elle is doing, and just because I don't think something is real doesn't mean I don't think it's important. I'm a poet. I write poems. They're not real, but they're important. There were, I think it was during our was it our Ouija board episode, or was it the one on the mirror divination with the spooky painting?
I think it was the
mirror divination. I will not touch that. Like the whole Bloody Mary thing that kids play, I refuse.
Bro, you have to listen to our episode.
Let me tell you, Bloody Mary isn't a person; it's a question.
It's a question. It literally is a question.
So Bloody Mary is based in Russian.
No. I got chills.
It's based in a Russian divination method that was meant to help young women find their future husband. Like, it was literally just like, let's see who Janice is going to marry. I guess it's Russian. Let's see who Janice is going to marry. And they would look into a mirror and by candlelight, and you would see your future husband behind you. Or if you saw your own corpse, it meant that you were going to die unmarried. So will I be bloody or will I be married?
That's the question.
It's a question.
Oh god,
not an actual like mirror ghost. Yeah,
that's terrifying.
and there's also a scientific explanation for it as well. When you stare into a mirror long enough, it causes the facial recognition center of your brain to misfire, causing prosopagnosia, which is the inability to recognize faces. So you seeing your own face in a mirror when you have prosopagnosia is like looking at a stranger. So your own reflections registering as a stranger. And there's also a thing called Troxler's fading, which is where if you stare at a point for long enough, the details will start to vanish as your brain looks for new stimulus. So you will see holes in your face, and like you might see like a hole appear over your eye, like you're winking or you're a skull. So yeah,
that's wild.
Demystify that for you a little bit.
Yeah, and that's kind of a lot of the things I feel like it just ain't that deep, you guys.
Oh crap.
I just feel like, because so much of what I do, and I'm a very like grounded real world psychic, like yes, I do this for work, but it's way more about supporting people and giving them guidance and just being someone that's on their team. I really am more of, I guess, like a spiritual therapist. I'm not a therapist, but really that's a lot of what I do. So there's a lot of things like that I'm like, the ghost that's in your room is probably not a demon. Like, I need you to explain that. And a lot of people will be like, there's something that's waking me up at night. I'm like, okay, well, is it startling or scary? I guess startling. Okay, then it's probably not a big deal. And so I feel like RJ and I can make that work, because I'm not like, no, you have to go to the moon. You have to tell the moon what you want. Otherwise the moon will never grant. I'm not like that.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
and I'm not one of those pretentious atheists that's like, gotcha, Christians.
yeah,
right.
Prove me wrong, Wiccans. I can see the value in spirituality, especially from like a historical and anthropological standpoint, because there's a reason that we did it. We've done it for so long. It's because it helps, and sometimes it does get way out of hand, which makes for great podcast content.
It does.
And I guess to put it into context for everybody else, you know, you both have experienced these things within your realm of understanding. And I belong to a sect of Christianity called the LDS Church, if you guys are familiar with that.
God,
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So you're FLDS.
My freaking no, not FLDS, XLDS.
XLDS.
Oh, XLDS. Okay, so I'm LDS.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If you are familiar, if anybody out there is familiar with Oliver Cowdery, right?
Yeah, very.
So I'm basically Oliver Cowdery, but in the sense that I'm still active in the church. You cannot convince me one way or another that where I'm at and what I believe is not real because of so much of what I have experienced. And so it's kind of like the same thing. I'm pretty sure that if I came to you and explained and told you my experiences within my faith and within what I believe, you would probably have a different explanation for it. Whereas in my realm of understanding, you know, I believe it in a certain way and nothing else can explain it other than how I have perceived it.
Well, so actually, LDS culture and a lot of that stuff is super heavily based in magic. It's left-hand path magic coming from Brigham Young, or not Brigham Young. Joseph Smith was actually a left-hand magic practitioner, and that's where a lot of the rituals and stuff that they do inside of the temple come from, is magic. So if you and I sat down and had a conversation, and you were like, "I want to talk to you about your beliefs. I want to talk to you about." What is that called when the bishop does the predictive reading? What is that?
Oh, that's not the bishop. That's the patriarch. That's your patriarchal blessing.
Your patriarchal blessing. Yeah.
Okay. So if like we sat down and looked at that, it's basically from the same stuff. It has a different name, but that's like another way that people really try to, I guess, like look down on or push away spirituality and magic is by saying, oh, no, only through Jesus, only through this one specific way. When I believe that there's so many different access points to it. And I don't think the way that you believe or what you believe in is wrong, because it helps you. And that's the most important thing to me.
And even when you look at like, even on LDS.org's website, they have information about things like dowsing that people like Oliver Cowdery did that are based in like old school magical practices.
Yeah. So when we're like, I'm from Utah, that's where I like grew up. That's where I spent most of my life, other than I traveled around and lived in a few different places, but we're very well aware of LDS practices and culture. Yeah.
Okay. Well then, yeah. So perfect. So I don't have to explain anything to you.
Oh no, I am extremely familiar.
He served a mission.
Yeah. I was tits deep in it.
Where'd you serve, just out of pure curiosity?
Lubbock, Texas.
Oh, wow. I'm
Did
so
you have a
sorry.
mission?
Home of
Did you
chicks.
have
I
a
did. I
mission?
did serve a mission. I served Spanish speaking in East LA.
Oh,
Okay.
very cool. All right.
Yeah.
That's where my companion was from.
Oh, really? He's from East LA.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Wait, how old are you?
I'm 29.
Okay, so you were a little bit before my time. I'm 25.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's so interesting. So, I guess in the realm of what I believe, if you were to explain to somebody, it's basically it is a form of magic, but the source is different, right?
Yeah.
Like we believe in a cosmic being that is
God.
omnipotent and
Mhm.
all knowing and all powerful, and we just practice a different form of magic that has deity as the source.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would say like my thing is I guess my view of spirituality and magic is a little bit different because I view source as being rather indifferent. Like to me, I'm pretty much a nihilist. My boyfriend called a nihilist and a what is it?
A cynic.
Yeah, cynic. Yeah, I got called a cynic. But so to me, I think I view all of spirituality and our interaction with the universe as completely up to you and what you make it and what you need from it. So I don't believe that there's a being out there that's like, oh, you've done all of the correct things and now I will bless you. I believe that there's just something out there that we all come from, and your experience of that, you get to choose. You get to choose if it's positive or negative. There's nothing at the end of the day that I lay in bed and I think about all these things that I've done that I'm going to be punished for or not punished for or rewarded for. I don't think that there's any sort of black and white system. I believe that everything is a shade of gray, and your experience in that is what you determine. So I'm not personally big on like, oh, do good things because of good karma. I think good karma is great, but I don't do things because I want good things to happen to me. I do good things because I think we should all do good things.
Right.
So that's kind of a difference that kind of shades between religion and spirituality. That would be a very, probably to theologians, it would be a very, very big change, but to normal people it'd be a very small change, if that makes sense.
Right. And so I'll give you this for free.
Yeah.
So one of my companions on my mission, he and we had a revelation, you could say.
Yes.
Is we figured out, or at least as far as we believe, I guess, we figured out why in Old Testament, New Testament, and wherever you look, why there is a difference between killing in the name of like God and country and for your family and the difference between cold-blooded murder, right? And it's intent. And I very much believe that. I very much believe that you will be so in terms of judgment in Christianity, I firmly believe that you will be judged on your actions based on the intent behind those actions. So, and I think that's something that's different between a lot of people from what they understand, right? Because a lot of people have that question is like, well, why is it okay? I guess to put it in a context that RJ might understand easier. It's like, why is it okay that Nephi killed Laban, but
the classic, the classic beheading of Laban.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's as far as I understand it. The difference between somebody defending their family and their country out in Iraq and in a war, and the difference between a mugger shooting down a store owner is the intent behind it.
So that's actually how a lot of our justice systems work. So we have what's called mens rea, which is your mental state at the time you commit the crime, which involves the intention of what you do. But that does not always make you free from the consequences of your actions, like joining the military and then ending up with PTSD as a consequence of doing that. And it's a negative consequence and it's tragic, right? But a consequence nonetheless.
Right.
And for me, it's like, it does get a little more complicated because it's like, what if the war that you're fighting in is unjust? Right. But you're just following orders, which changes the mens rea.
You have to know, then that would like presuppose that you understand that it's not just, right?
Right. And that's why and that's why I bring that up, is that everything is subjective because everybody's actions are going to be judged based on their intent behind it, not necessarily, the cosmic intent of whatever is happening and on a larger scale, but you personally, what is your intent behind this particular action?
Yeah, I think kind of it's interesting because I don't believe like in judgment systems, I guess. Like I don't really sit in judgment. I hear,
Right.
oh, you should hear some of the things that I hear.
Yeah, bro, are you from Utah?
No, I'm not actually. I graduated from BYU in Utah, and I only lived there for about 5 years. But I grew up in Tennessee, so I grew up in the South.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But so I would say like, because I'm a consequence oriented person and I'm like, consequences are consequences, whether they're good or bad. So I just try to be like, well, what's the consequence of this action and what's going to come back from that? To me, people have to make that choice about what they're doing and what their intent is. And I also think that there's so much room for growth because when I look back to, things that I've done when I was younger and I just didn't know any better. And I was just like, I don't know, I guess I'm going to do this. Then I like to look at things from a forgiveness perspective and make the choice to forgive like, well, I did the best that I could. And that means that now I know better. So I'm going to do better. And I think that's something that's kind of interesting that I really like is the idea of forgiveness. And I just view from my perspective and my spirituality that I don't need a middleman to forgive me, that I make a choice to forgive myself and that the universe coincides with that. And then gives me opportunities to continuously prove that. So I don't believe in like a post-life or posthumous judgment. I believe in the consequences of your actions and you have to figure out how to live with the things that you've done. And some people do and some people don't. And that can be really tough. So I guess I view that and like forgiveness in a similar way as Christianity, but without kind of that middleman or without the God on the other side of that.
I can understand that. I can sympathize with that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sorry, I'm eating a Crunch bar because I haven't eaten dinner yet.
I know, we were like shoveling food in before we came.
This podcast not sponsored by Crunch Bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely not, but I'm still going to eat one anyway. So, how long have you been practicing, Elle? Because you said you grew up in Utah. Did you grow up practicing, or was it something that you found later on?
So I was not raised Christian. Like I was baptized Episcopalian. We would go to church on Christmas and Easter because my dad is a musician. And so he would play in the choirs and the orchestra. So that was when we went, which was fine. I, was really troubled when I was younger. I like literally would not sleep in my own bed until I was like 8 years old. I would sleep in a sleeping bag on my parents' floor and they didn't know what was wrong with me, but I kept telling them that there were people in my room. And I was like, I don't know, there's people in my room because I'm a medium and I was seeing ghosts. My parents were like, all right, well, I guess we don't know what that means. You're good to sleep on our floor.
All right, cool. The house is haunted. I guess we're just going to move.
Yeah, no, my parents.
Is it the house that's haunted, or is it you?
It's me. I'm haunted. Just that's who I am. Every house I've ever lived in is haunted, and I said that to my mom, and she was like, "Well, stop bringing the ghosts home." And I was like,
"Oh my gosh."
Okay.
Like that New York mom was like, "Well, stop bringing the ghosts home. Then what are you gonna do about it?
What do you want?"
Hey everyone. We'd like to take a moment to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Are you searching for a good therapist, but just don't know where to look? BetterHelp is an online service that can assess your needs through a quick survey and matches you with your own licensed professional therapist. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it is professional counseling done securely online. Especially in this time of uncertainty, BetterHelp is available for clients worldwide and may be exactly what you're looking for. There's a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's counselor network, which may not be locally available in many areas. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. I even used BetterHelp. It was so easy to find a therapist and regularly get a hold of them. You can message them at any time and even set up video conferences to talk live with your therapist. Visit betterhelp.com/TCT podcasts to get 10% off your first month and join the over 500,000 people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. That's betterhelp.com/TCT PODCASTS.
So when I was about 14 or 15, well, pretty much when I was about 12 until I was probably 17, I really struggled because I had all of these feelings that I didn't have names for, that I didn't understand. And it was grieving. And I'm an empath. And when you're an empath, you just really feel the emotions of everything around you. And so I was just 15 years old, soaking up all of these emotions from all of these people and really struggling with that. So my parents moved me to a Lutheran school that I went to for ninth grade. And it was awful. And I was deeply suicidal and really, really struggling and really terrifying my parents. So they're like, well, this is probably not the resolution to that. So they moved me to a public school. And then the first time I ever saw a psychic was my senior year of high school. My mom and I went to Indiana because I was looking at going to a college out in Indiana, and I had an audition out there. So we went out, and the day after my first audition, they had a psychic fair that my mom found like in the newspaper. And she was like, we're going to go get psychic readings. And I was like, I don't know what this means, but let's go. And that was pretty much how everything started. I started getting readings from people, and every single person was like, oh, you're going to be a professional psychic. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm going to be a theater manager, because that's what I was studying. And I kind of started leaning more into it. I had some tarot cards. My mom bought me some tarot cards when I was like 15, and I would read them occasionally. And then when I was 19, I was in a really horrible, abusive relationship that ended when my partner wanted to kill himself when I was going to leave him. And then my grandmother, who had died earlier that year, came to me in dreams. And basically, I've been a professional psychic since then. It has been just this really wild, like, I never grew up doing this, but I think that my parents believed me. They believed in the work that I was doing. They believed in psychics and mediums, and they supported me. So a lot of people that are readers don't become really good readers or don't do it professionally like I do until they're 40 or 50, because they get married and they're competing with their parents, and there's a lot of religious looking down on it. I have friends that were drinking in closets trying to make the ghosts go away when they were 20, and I was just doing it professionally. So it was just a really interesting, weird thing that I had access to because I did. I don't know.
That's really interesting, just because, so again, I grew up LDS, and I had an interest in it, but I never would have gone to a psychic probably until now. Like now I would be okay with experiencing it, basically only for the experience. Not that it would change my mind about anything.
Yeah, just to
but
see
I would
what
just to see another person's viewpoint. And that's primarily why I started podcasting, is because it gave me an opportunity to see other people's viewpoints.
Yeah.
I like understanding things. And so that's why I started doing this. So, you know, I would be open to it despite my deeply religious rooted background.
Yeah, well, and I think because people are kind of like, because I actually used to own a brick and mortar store in Salt Lake City that we would sell metaphysical products, and I had a bunch of room for psychics, and we would do monthly psychic fairs and classes and all sorts of stuff. And people would be like, how can you make that work in Utah when it's just so many Mormons? And honestly,
no.
Right. There's
not even.
Yeah,
I had a friend actually, okay. I had a group of friends, and it was me, one of my best friends, who is ex-LDS as well, his cousin, who is also ex-LDS, and then their ex-roommate, who was a practitioner, but she worshipped the Morrigan.
Okay.
So, and then I knew other people there who just did it. I knew people who were Celtic pagans. I knew people who were Norse pagans. Yeah.
Yeah, there's it's no problem here. Well, and really, I think the perception is a lot of people hear when you're growing up that it's bad or you're going to get punished for looking into it. And my mother is still Christian. She actually practices with me. She's a healer and a psychic too. And she will read with me. I had her hired as one of my practitioners, and she would come and do stuff. But she, I think, did some soul searching because she was raised pretty Episcopalian. My grandma goes to church every Sunday and deeply believes in it. And my mom was like, in my Bible, it says that this is okay. And so that's what you have to choose. And I think there's a lot of perception of like demonizing psychics, demonizing spirituality, and that it's like if you go to a psychic, you're going to get the death card, and then they're going to tell you that you're going to die, or you're going to owe them $5,000 so you don't die.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, you saw a psychic? They're basically a plot device for the Greek tragedy of your life.
Yeah, exactly. So what I typically do to reach new clients or to kind of educate, I often do free readings or at different fairs and stuff around Salt Lake when we have those, which is not right now. I do like $10 readings so people can kind of just come and sit down and get the experience. I'm not, as I said, a destiny believer. I don't believe in destiny, and I'm not a doomsday psychic. So there are things that I won't do. I will not predict people's death. I will not, if people come to me and say, I think I'm going to die, I will not confirm or deny that. I don't do that. That's not my place. That's not something I believe in, and it doesn't help people. So I think it absolutely can depend on your psychic. I know a fair amount of psychics that I don't think are ethical people, or like they don't practice psychic work ethically. And I do think that there are those people that are like, this is a great way for me to make a bunch of money. And really, it's a very difficult career path that's really, really vulnerable. And I deal with people's worst fears and all of that stuff really, really frequently. And I view myself just as someone who's on my client's side, just someone who can listen to them without judgment and just be there for them. And someone who can like maybe be a little bit of something good in their world, which is definitely not something churches will tell you that psychics do. So, yeah.
One of the reasons I think that psychic work works well in Utah is for two main reasons. There's one prevailing theory that's kind of like an internet theory that's like Mormons are more primed to believe in things magical and fantastical, and that's why there are lots of UFO sightings in Utah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, and I don't know if that
believe in more cosmic stuff and kind of what exists beyond that.
And I don't know if that can be validated, but I think the second reason, which I think is the biggest real reason, is that when you're no longer Mormon and you lose your faith, one of the things you lose is access to somebody like your bishop, who is a spiritual person you can talk to and a guide. And the individual practitioners of the psychics can help sort of fill that void. It's just instead of, 10% of your income plus whatever you can give to fast offerings, it's just a flat fee that they tell you in advance.
Yeah.
It's a one-time fee. No, okay. Yeah. I can see that. And I guess the other part that I would understand about it is that it leaves you with a void, losing that faith. And so you're trying to fill it with something, whether
especially here, because you lose everyone around you a lot of the time.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I guess, in terms of becoming an atheist, it's you replace that belief in something with a belief in nothing. It's still a belief, but it fills that void that I guess that was once there. Would you agree with that, or would you say that it's more just like an eh?
Sometimes, a lot of times for me, it's like I fill that void with just life, just like things in my actual life that are in front of me. If there is something, I can barely handle this life. Like I'm barely functioning. I don't even want to think about,
what comes next.
What comes next. But hopefully it's nothing.
Just blackness and sleep. That's all I want.
I know. Maybe I'm the real nihilist. I'm more of an absurdist, I would say.
You are an absurdist.
But yeah.
Well, I think that kind of question of like what people do when they lose their faith or when they leave a religion or a tradition, I do think that people look for that, but I think that certain people look for certain things in certain ways. So there will be people who hop from like one Christian sect to another because they believe in Christ, but they think that they need to have a guide. And I think that's the thing that's the most frustrating for me about religion, is that people feel like there needs to be a middleman, or that there needs to be someone that says this is what's right, instead of allowing people to find the things that feel right to them. And I would say, because I have a lot of clients that are ex-LDS, a lot of them. And I have a lot of people who because we would do group readings where we would it was me and another one of my friends who's a psychic, and we would have 10 to 30 people come in, and we would just do like flash readings really quick. And they would come and sit kind of in a circle, and we just have fun and talk about stuff and be together and do readings. And a lot of them are like, can we have friends? Can I meet your friends? And a lot of them are like women who are divorced and their ex-husbands are LDS. They left the LDS faith when they got divorced. Now they don't know what to do. They want to believe in something. They need someone to tell them what to do because they're used to having someone tell them what to do. And especially in Utah with it being such a patriarchy in LDS religion and communities here, that people are like, how do I fill this void? So there is a lot of that jumping, and you will especially get people who are like, I'm not LDS anymore. Woo, magic, Satan, yeah. And
yeah, they overcorrect
a
lot of the time.
Overcorrect and just head on into the danger zone.
You know, like, if they lied to me about this, they probably lied to me about binge drinking too.
It's bad. It's still bad. Still bad. Still don't do that.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
I think there's a lot of that, especially when you're just steeped in that in Utah, that people just feel like they're searching for something, or people really, it is that they love that connection that they have with God. They love feeling spiritually connected. They love knowing that someone has their back. They love feeling like they aren't alone. And then they're like, well, this kind of God isn't working for me. So what can I do? And that's why I'm really big on like empowering people in their spirituality and empowering them in what feels best to them. And I tell people, if you're missing church, go to church. Go do that. Go to church. Go see your bishop. Go see your family. Go see your friends. Do all of that. So I'm a big proponent of that. But I would say that maybe not all psychics are like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the bias against psychics in America is rooted in xenophobia. As we discussed in our episode on tea leaf reading became very illegal in America simply to persecute Romani people because it was a means of them making money. And they were, a nomadic people. And that persecution of Romani people really changed the way tea leaf readings happened. And in the 30s, it was almost like prohibition. Like the first
really
female
was.
police officers, their specific goals were to bust up tea reading shops. Because it was primarily a women's thing to do. And male police officers would be sus. So they'd have the first female police officers in America do that.
That's crazy.
And what it has created is in New York, there's this culture of psychics where it has to be this underground thing. It has to be this sort of like seedy kind of thing because that's the culture it was forced to take on because of this illegality rooted in xenophobia.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think we're seeing, I'm sure that you could attest to this, and people who've been around in America in the last 5 years can attest to spirituality and magical practices just booming. I mean, it's just out of control. If you think about the controversy with Sephora a couple of years ago, how they put together, it's a makeup shop, and they put together little kits with like white sage and rose quartz and then sold them for spiritual people during Christmas. And I personally was like, why don't we go support the little shops like myself where you're paying my employees instead of Sephora, who's like not properly harvesting things? And so we're going to see a lot more of that more and more as people find or realize that like traditional government and traditional education systems and traditional religions are failing them, as people are like having this wake up across America where it's kind of like all of the things we've been doing for so long aren't working for us. What do we do now? That's when we're going to see spirituality booming. And that's why why it's booming now. It's because people still want that guidance and still want to know what to do and want people to turn to, but they are not like the rules and the traditions and everything that have kept them trapped basically in government and school and religions aren't working for them anymore. And that's where a lot of that comes from, is just kind of a growth awakening or a mass awakening.
And historically, we see a boom in magic and spiritualism whenever there is
an apocalypse.
Uncertainty in the world. Like if you can imagine living in the 1930s, you got the Dust Bowl, the Spanish flu just ended. You just finished World War I,
heading into World War II.
And now you're doing another World War. So people were like, yep, it's the end of the world, and started like small doomsday cults and more interest in mediumship and more interest in ghosts and a deeper obsession with death. That, I mean, we're seeing that happen more now too. I don't know if it's to the extent of that it happened in the 1930s.
I think it is, but I think a lot of the stuff that happened in the 1930s was underground, just like it is now. Like, I think we'll learn about it for years to come.
Yeah, I feel like every time we do an episode about some sort of magic that happened in America, it's some mumbo jumbo that happened in the 30s.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like someone started a crazy cult and is talking to dinosaur ghosts and got a bunch of followers to give up all their belongings and like stuff.
Yo, I'm not gonna lie. I would love to talk to some dinosaur ghosts. That would be
Me too.
really cool.
That's a tempting cult to join.
Oh yeah, or if you could actually contact the flying spaghetti monster, I just want to know what he thinks.
Right, you just want to know what's up with that.
Yeah, just like what's going through your spaghetti mind. I want to know.
So one thing I do want to say that's interesting about that is like with the flying spaghetti monster and all of these different, I guess, deities.
Parody religions?
Yeah, like deities that people make up. So I always tell my clients it's really important to be careful about the words that we use to explain things because I believe that words have power. I'm also a writer. Absolutely. I'm also a poet. Yeah, so I'm a really big proponent of like, say what you mean what you say, because that's what you put energy into. So things like the flying spaghetti monster that you're like, that's not a real thing. But so many people believe in it and they put belief into it and kind of sort of they do, kind of sort of they don't, basically. But that it becomes real. And that's kind of how deities are, is that they become real because people believe in them. They become real because people remember them, because they invest in them. So that's like when I said I don't really worship deities because they need us just as much as we need them. That's what I mean, is that we create those things and that energy doesn't exist unless we believe in it, unless we put energy and intention into it. So interesting things to think about.
Yeah. And some of the oldest magic is just language. It's logos. The ability to speak and communicate and conjure an idea or object in somebody's mind is magic. And some of the most pragmatic and realistic curses work that way too. Like Irish curses were just meant to like offend you so bad that you fixate on it until it happens to you. Mm-hmm. Like a thousand placings of a noose around your neck is something that somebody would shout at you if you pissed them off, and then you'd be like having anxiety about it.
Yeah. So, okay, in all of your research, in all of your, I guess, forms of searching. Mm-hmm. Both in practicing and on the anthropological, historical side of everything. Mm-hmm. For Elle, what is the most interesting form of magic that you have practiced? Because I know there's a lot.
The electriomancy we did.
We did do chicken magic. We did readings with chickens. That was pretty cool.
What?
Yeah, our friend has chickens, and we borrowed the chickens, and we put tarot cards in the chicken pen, and then let the chickens pick the tarot cards.
Yeah, it's another one of those like Russian Christmas traditions. We did it for our Christmas episode because apparently during Sviatki, which is like a Russian Halloween and winter Christmas time, they do divination with chickens. As they'll like put a chicken on a lead, put the lead on a post that's like staked down, and then put chicken feed in some runes on the ground and see which ones the chicken goes to. Almost
so
just like a Ouija board, but with like a chicken that's being tantalized by treats.
I think that's definitely the weirdest thing I've done. Honestly, one of my favorite magical practices is really voodoo. Voodoo is such a beautiful religion that is so vastly misunderstood. And it's a closed religion, so you have to be invited to practice in it. But a lot of people have this perception, because a lot of voodoo practitioners that we know about are people like Pablo Escobar and other people who are basically from like Afro-Caribbean cultures that use it in drug trafficking. And that's pretty much Americans' like exposure to voodoo. And also there's a lot of racism. And people look at that and say, well, this is an innately Black thing, and therefore it is a bad thing. Voodoo is just a really, really beautiful tradition that rests basically in developing relationships with deities and being loved by them and loving them in return. There's a lot of really interesting, beautiful practices that happen. And there's a lot of really beautiful combinations that you get to make with them, and just the relationship you get to develop with the deities in that, and the mentorship that you have involved in that is really beautiful. And I do want to say, for the listeners who are like, I'm going to go do voodoo, you have to be invited in. You have to have a madre. You have to have someone that tells you you've been selected to do it.
Yeah, it's a closed practice.
It's a closed practice. something that people have to be selected to go into, and you have to be invited, and not something that I practice anymore just because my life took a different direction. But I'm still like friends with my deities. They're still.
Whoa, wait a minute. So you were invited to practice voodoo?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah. So I did that for about 2 years and I loved it. And I still have those connections and still really, really just respect how beautiful the religion is. And there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff that I can't even begin to get into, but it's really incredible. And I think that it deserves a lot more value. And I think that it deserves to be talked about in a really loving way, because it's a really beautiful, loving religion that people just don't understand.
So here's a question that I have for you.
Okay.
I'm sorry we keep coming back to this. Okay, I want to clarify something. I did not know before this that there was any LDS connection between this and me and them. I had no idea. So this is what I'm using to draw connection to. So
Okay.
if I talk about a lot of LDS stuff, everybody at home, I'm super sorry.
We get it. The three of us know what's happening.
Yeah.
Listen, we are steeped in it every day. It is unavoidable.
Yeah. So I remember on my mission in the MTC, there was a kid who was from Louisiana. He was from New Orleans. And there were kids there that were going to New Orleans, the Baton Rouge mission, and they were speaking Spanish. And I think he was trying to scare them, but I remember him saying, "You best watch out for old blood."
Okay.
Does that make any sense? And this is more just to satisfy my own curiosity now that I know somebody who practices voodoo. Is that something that actually exists in voodoo, where it's just like something that is referred to as the old blood?
Well, the old blood would be referencing people who have voodoo and hoodoo in their veins, whose family come from that. So they're descendants. And yes, absolutely, your magic is more powerful if it comes from your family. So that's one of the things when we incarnate into life, we choose our family that we go into for a lot of different reasons. A lot of times because we've got karma, a lot of times because we can help break generational curses, which are just patterns. Generational curses are patterns that your family has done forever. And when you're looking at someone who's old blood, so my madre's mom and her grandmother were voodoo, hoodoo. That's what they did. And everything that she knew, every part of her magic, all of her practice was that deep. This is where I come from. So I have access to only like a very, very small amount of that power, which I don't like calling it that because it's not part of my blood. It's something that I've been chosen, that I could act into, that I was chosen and selected by deities to be part of. For her, that's who she is, and that's her blood, and that's everything she is. And voodoo practitioners definitely have a different approach to life. There's definitely there can be that dark side of it, but there's dark sides to everything. There's definitely dark sides to Christianity. And so
absolutely.
It's all, and I would say like I have personally been more persecuted by Christians and people who want to attack me for the work that I do than by any magical practitioner. I'm way more afraid of Christians or getting in an Uber with someone and telling them that I'm a psychic and them disappearing me than I am of anything a magical practitioner would do to me. So it was definitely something that he was just using to scare them a little bit, but it's something that you would want to watch out for. Those old practitioners, the ones that their mammy came over from Haiti, that would you want to be careful of that for sure.
Okay. And I guess now with RJ's side of things, speaking in a historical and anthropological I promise, I graduated with a degree in linguistics and I still can't speak English. In terms of the historical and I guess just cultural aspects of any particular practice, what is the most interesting that you have seen?
Mormonism is a close one. But
Mormonism is very interesting to study theologically.
It is the American religion. It is the Christianity that was created in America that succeeded other like forms of small Christian cults that expanded beyond that, which is quite impressive. And then there's crazy stuff that schisms of the church do or have done
that I want to.
I guess I should have said, I mean, in terms of just like the mystical, because granted, there are some weird things in Mormonism. I will admit there are some interesting things that you would not find anywhere else. I will admit that.
Well, and I think more of that's like a lot of the people that are departed from the Mormon way. I would say for the most part, Mormons are peaceful and chilling.
For the most part.
And then there's the schisms that you're like, what are we doing?
And then there are the people that just go just a little bit nuts. So
what's the weirdest magical thing you've done?
The weirdest magical thing I've done?
Or weirdest magical practice,
hang out with you and do a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh.
I made RJ. So we bought an RV this year to go travel, and really the idea is that I'll be able to go work on the road and do some readings with people, and we can go record the podcast.
Yeah. And I'm more known as a slam poet. I'm like a medium. I'm like a B-list performance artist in a
B-list, yeah,
D-list performance genre.
Yeah.
So I tour America all the time just doing poems.
So we bought an RV so we could do that once the world opens up a little bit more. But we were looking at RVs, and I was like, we're gonna get an RV, RJ. We're gonna do it. And he was like, okay. And I was like, all right, I got my magical spells out.
Yeah,
go ahead and take this candle for me.
This is one of the times where things got a little spoopy.
I was like setting up our little spell. It was a little manifestation spell on the full moon. And I was like, all right, I need you to spit on this candle.
Yeah. And I just,
yep. And he was like, what? You need me to what? Yeah.
Here you go.
So
have fun with a spit candle, I guess.
I've coerced him. I have to say that within a month, the next full moon, we signed the contract on it, and then the next full moon, we took it on its first trip. So.
Yeah, but the spoopy thing was when we were RV shopping, Elle was like, okay, I've asked my guides to give me a sign. And they said, the sign is a blue butterfly. And I was like, okay. And Elle was like, so if we see a blue butterfly,
you got to let me know. I was like, you have to let me know.
That means it's the affirmative sign that's the RV we should get. And I'm like, okay.
All right.
And the RV we got is a safari trek. And it's a discontinued RV, but during its run, they had a singular artist do commissioned paintings on the back, and every painting is unique, and it's usually of an animal. So one safari trek might have a tiger, and another one has a jaguar.
We have a not very cool.
we have a heron, but the spoopy thing was that this artist in every single one of these murals hid a blue butterfly.
Which
was
that's so cool.
It was when
spoopy. We had no idea. I have this like practice that I do where I was like, okay, guides, like this is what I want to do. And we like looked at this RV, and I was like, I don't know if it's the right one, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I was like, all right, guides, send me I don't know a what. And I was like, a blue butterfly. I want a blue butterfly if this is the right RV. And so we got in the car the next day. We went down to go look at the RV again. And I told RJ, I was like, look for the blue butterfly. And he like went on the back and he looked at it and he was like, I think that's a blue butterfly. And I was like, what? And so I went back and looked at it. Sure enough, it's a blue butterfly. And then we looked into it, and he puts a blue butterfly on every single painting, which we had no idea. I had no idea that was the thing. So it was a very weird.
That's crazy.
So it was spoopy. For sure.
So would you say the craziest thing that you've ever experienced is living with a psychic then? Living with somebody who manifests this stuff into the universe?
Probably. I mean, life under Mormonism was pretty wild. I mean, it didn't seem like it at the time, but when you leave the bubble and you're like, oh my God, there's like a whole world. There's people that believe other things.
In Utah.
Yeah, when you grow up in Utah.
In Utah specifically.
So imagine going to BYU, but from the time you're born. Like it's so insulated. And especially my parents, or my mom specifically, was super Orthodox.
She is.
So I did not get to really experience or talk to kids even that weren't Mormon, because they were bad.
And I do need to say this. That is a common thing that does happen. You will meet people who are very Orthodox and very much believe it. Because, I tell people this all the time, but I'm a weird Mormon in the sense that I do practice. I very much believe in everything that I do. Mm-hmm. And so I go to the temple, I go to church, I do all the stuff. We just had the missionaries.
Yeah.
We just had the missionaries over for a lesson last night. Like the missionaries wanted to do a lesson with members, and I was like, yeah, sure, come over. We're not doing anything.
Make them dinner and you hang out. Yeah.
Yeah. But I grew up outside of Utah.
Yeah.
It's different. It's very different.
It's wildly different, just because you do have a lot of people who are of that mindset where you are not allowed to associate outside of this.
Yeah, that was something, because I grew up in Utah. So I kind of had that when I was like elementary school, moving into middle school. I had a lot of friends in elementary school. And then when they started going to Young Women's, which is like the young teenagers, like, let's get you guys on the right track. So when they started doing that, I no longer had friends. But then I made new friends, and I have like some friends that I really respect from high school that were LDS and friends, and they see what I do and they don't interact with my psychic stuff, but it is what it is. And
and like there is this fun sort of like counterculture in Salt Lake of like people that have lost their faith that are trying to find like new people to connect with, because it is very lonely for that first little bit, and a lot of people do fall into addiction or like get
which is a shame.
entrapped in stuff. But there's this very crazy art scene here. Like drag shows are off the chain.
No, it's true. I went to a drag show in Provo.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure it was off the chain for sure.
It was nuts. It was wild.
And you see this art scene sort of be like very welcoming, and then there's like the little like fun poking, like
I know it's probably gonna be a little offended. Some of the stuff, if you can like. We haven't had anything wild this year because everything's been scary.
Yeah.
But there are like little things. I don't know. I think in Utah, I feel like we find ways to coexist, or that people don't really care what I do. I have some clients that are LDS, some that are ex-LDS, and just people. So.
Yeah. I can understand that. So.
And I'm trying to get a drink to catch on called the Jack Mormon, which is half coffee and half hot chocolate. So your bishop can't tell. Like, it's got marshmallows in it. It's hot chocolate.
That's really funny.
Trying to get it to catch on. It's been hard this year though.
No, I can imagine. Yeah.
It's kind of fun that you're LDS. It's like
there is a coffee shop I used to go to called Jack Mormon Coffee. That was
Oh my god.
Their thing was like fancy hot chocolates. And also fancy coffees to like bring the Mormons in, but also to bring the non-Mormons in.
That's super funny. That's so interesting. Oh gosh. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I really enjoyed this. And I want to again reiterate, we didn't do this to rag and promote Mormonism. I genuinely think this was a good conversation. I had a lot of fun with this, and it was interesting finding parallels and being able to understand it from within my realm of understanding. So I really appreciate this.
I hope that demystifies and demonizes a couple of things for, you and maybe your listeners. I hope you're less afraid of mirrors.
I'm more afraid of mirrors.
My hope is, maybe we'll have some listeners that aren't LDS, because I think that the LDS Mormon faith gets as much side eyes as like psychic work does.
Oh, without a doubt.
So I feel like
especially outside of Utah, where it's not like this ethno state.
People have really interesting ideas. So hopefully people will see that there's, common ground between all of it, and it's good.
And that's, again, this is why we call this the Common Tongue Podcasts.
Yeah.
Because we are all just trying to find common ground between us.
For sure. And if you ever want a reading, let me know.
Yeah, we'll do a reading for you on our show using whatever.
Yeah, please. So promote yourselves. Where can we find you?
Yeah, so our podcast is called Mancy with an M, not Nancy, like mother. But it's the Greek suffix for magic. Each episode we cover a different Mancy or method of magic. We just released our episode on hydromancy and Nostradamus today.
Yeah, went out today.
And part 2 will be next Wednesday. But yeah, you can find us wherever you find podcasts, and you can read more about us at mancypodcast.com.
And if I wanted to buy your poetry.
Oh yeah, if you're interested in my poetry, if you want, I can even do a poem for you. If you're interested in my poetry, rjwalkerpoet.com.
And
All right.
I'm Elle Alder. You guys can find me on Twitter at Laurels of Lux, and my Etsy is also called Laurels of Lux. If you guys can't afford a reading and you desperately, desperately want one or need one, follow my Twitter. I regularly do giveaways and I do free card readings for people all the time. So definitely follow me, and I'm happy to help. And you can find me on Etsy for a reading.
All right, and I
Hey
will
there,
definitely
everyone.
put
Thank
all
you
that
so
stuff
much
in the
for listening
description,
to
so
this
keep an eye out
episode
for that,
today.
guys. And once
in a
again,
few
thank you
hours,
so much for
we have a
coming
second
on.
episode
Everybody
going
at
up,
home,
which is
thank you
weird
for
and
listening,
wild, and I've never
we
done
will
that
definitely
before.
catch you on the next one.
So
Yeah.
if you enjoyed this
Bye.
episode,
Yes, bye.
go check out the
Bye
other
now.
one that's coming out in a few hours, because it's going to be all about indie authors. And I will let future me explain that when the time comes. So hopefully we'll see you there.